Hello, everyone, and welcome back to The Doctor Will See You Now. As you may know, for The Doctor, crime fiction is just delicious, but then when crime fiction comes from elsewhere, from outside the UK, well, then it's even more delicious. And for our session now, we have with us just that kind of crime fiction. I would love to welcome into the consultation room Bogdan Hrib and Marina Sofia. Welcome, both of you. I hope you're well. Just this possibility that we're here to talk about crime fiction in translation, which is such a special commodity, shall we call it. The book that we're going to be discussing for our session is Resilience. Sadly, as ever, I'm reading on PDF. So if you two would be so good as to hold your copies up. Da, da, da. Oh, the original as well from Marina. Yeah, excellent. Thank you. Bogdan, to start with you, so Resilience, a geopolitical thriller that came out August 2021, published by Corollas. Before we get to the book, what is it like to be a crime writer in Romania?
I think it's, good evening, everybody, but I think it's extremely exotic, I don't think that I could use the word dangerous, but everybody thinks that you are somebody who collect true crime stories. We have a book fair a couple of weeks before, and we had launched an anthology, a sort of collective volumes, noir of a sort of Noir de Brașov. Brașov, it's a city, a very old city in the middle of the country, and we had a book fair there, and we had launched that book with 10 stories. And a lot of people come and said, "Oh, crime fiction, which is about it? That last year crime. Oh, who is that policeman? The guy from the city council? Which is that? Is that doctor? Is that doctor from the county hospital?" And it's like that. I think we are not too many which are trying to write crime fiction in Romania. Unfortunately, we are not too many because our public, our readers, think we are a little bit unorganized. I would say not quite organized. We had some years before a sort of club, but we were only 6 in that crime fiction club.
Yeah.
Now I think we are a lot of more. I think we are almost 10 people which are already published, and Corollas already published 4 of them. My friends Ana Maria Ionescu, Teodora Matei, and the other Bogdan.
The other Bogdan, yeah.
Yes, yeah. Unfortunately, we have 2 Bogdans in English now, but I think it could be better. It will be like a stamp like that. So we are around 10 probably, but our readers still want, of course, Nordic noir and British, let's say British noir, English noir, American. So Lee Child is everywhere, Lisa Marklund, all the new guys, Irsa from Iceland, Irsa Sigurdardottir. We are trying to find a way to promote our books, our novels and our stories, just to convince them that we could write as good as the foreigners.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting, looking at a country's, the whole body of crime fiction from different countries, and where there are certain countries that have a long history of crime fiction, and so there's, but it makes me think of the experience that I know with Spain, that when a country's had a certain regime, or a certain kind of regime, where to write crime fiction is to write against the perfect nature of the regime and how everything is just fine in the country. And how could you possibly write about crime fiction, because there is no crime to write about.
No, sorry, may I interrupt you? No,
Please do.
It is crime. Only the spy from the Western countries. Everything from the Western countries, from the West, it's dangerous. So there are a lot of spies who want to steal our secrets, our militia, because there was not a police, there was a militia, state militia. The clever guys from there and the secret service from the Communist Party, who always solved the problems, who always caught the spies and solved the problems, and everything. It's happy, and the people is happy at the end, and it's a great life.
But always from outside, yeah? Always from outside. The bad came from outside.
Absolutely. Not outside, not all out, not from north, south, or east, only from west.
Only from west.
Only from west.
But isn't that interesting now? In so much crime fiction produced in Scandinavia, in the UK, the bad guys are usually the Eastern Europeans. And I'm wondering, you know, when are we going to get to this point of, we usually challenge lots and lots of stereotypes, do we not? In, you know, there's so much to do with gender and ethnicity and all those kind of things. But when are we in the West going to stop writing the baddie, you know, from the East?
I don't know. I think the Berlin Wall and the Cold War doesn't end from enough time. I think maybe in 50 years, 100 years, it will be, you know, how you said in English, Inquisition, the Inquisition,
yeah.
Inquisition, it was on ruling things and all the inquiries and everything for 300, 400 years during the Middle Age. So I think it must pass more years to before we could we could say that we are European. I mean, all European, so European part of a common civilization, let's say. But even that, in that moment, we could say that some foreigners come from East, because Far Eastern, there are other countries, so the Eastern problem would be more and far, but will be also from the East.
As well.
On the West, we have only the Atlantic.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And Marina, I'd like to bring you in as well at this point, because when we're considering crime fiction from Romania, and first of all, can I ask you, this sounds like a bit like a relationship thing, how long have you been involved with it?
With crime fiction?
Yeah. Well, crime fiction from Romania, yeah.
Well, I did actually read it when I was growing up. There were like 2 authors really that you could read, and then there were some classic ones that had written some really sort of influenced by Sherlock Holmes or by, you know, Agatha Christie or something like that. And then there were 2 as I was growing up. And I couldn't help feeling, well, they're trying their best within a genre that is really quite limited in terms of what they can achieve. And I thought, just you wait until, you know, when we're free and everything, there will be an explosion, a proliferation, because we really like reading crime fiction. So I'm sure there will be plenty of writers. But as Bogdan discovered, that wasn't the case. I think there was a glut of translations, and there was a real appetite to see what was happening elsewhere in the world, which is understandable because a lot of that hadn't been translated before. But yes, I'm hoping, and I'm glad to see that there are some interesting younger writers coming to the fore now. So
wonderful. And so let's get down to this book, this resilience. Now, Bogdan, I remember meeting you at Iceland Noir, a good few years ago now, and I remember having to prepare the Greek connection.
Yes.
Yeah, I remember having to prepare that and being introduced to your character, Stilian Munteanu, yeah?
Montano, yes.
And here we are now, is it 4 books later?
5, I think.
5 books later now. So first of all, how has he changed? Has he changed since I first met him? What is this guy like now?
I think he's a little bit old, tired. He had enough in this life. He had too much politics, too much problems, friends, changings among people that he know around Europe. I think he's I think he's now a real European citizen with a lot of problems, with a wife which is living in London, and he stays almost all the time in Bucharest. So there are 3 hours between them, 3.5 hours by flight hours between them and the whole Europe. I think he could understand the world. I mean, he could live in that world, but probably he don't understand all the people.
Can I say something though about the relationship between him and his wife? I think it's beautiful, because I think the way they text each other, the way they call each other, I mean, despite this distance, and the way he talks about how he feels about her, I think there's such a tenderness and a real sense of this is a deep love. He talks about her smile and the way she prepares his favorite salad when he arrives after a long journey. I just think there's because I have to say there's some quite grim parts of this book as well. Grim and gruesome, but the love that they have, or the relationship that they have, I don't know, it's a really beautiful part of the writing.
You know, I think this is the real life. I mean, with good parts, with family, with a long distance relationship, with problems, with friends with problems, and with I think Stelian Munteanu, it's really not a model for a Romanian, let's say, detective, because he's not quite a detective, but from person involved in some police investigations. But I think we are living, I mean, in Romania, we are living a sort of a melting pot of problems, because we are talking a lot about this melting pot of people, races, ethnicities, I don't know, religions. But I think in Romania, the melting pot is of daily problems. I mean, new prices for, I don't know, food, new prices for electricity. Now it's our problem now, the electricity. Problems of finding a new job, a new house in a different town, trying to be very modern, because the technology, it's over you all the time, and same time you have some old habits, and nowadays we have that pandemic, which is changing, still changing everything. The book it's written at the beginning. I mean, the plot, it's during the 2019 and 2019, during the 2019. So right before, and I think that the title, I don't know, it's a good title for a novel, for a crime novel, or for a mixed crime novel with a geopolitical thriller, let's say. I think the resilience is the word that could define, sorry, my English.
It's good. Your English is great. Go ahead.
Thank you. So I think resilience could define our life nowadays in Romania. It's about survival, but not only survival. It's more than that. It's about resilience. How we go further, how we pass each problem and we go further forward. And we are living with all that problems, and we're going forward, and we are changing, we are loving, we are hating, we are solving problems, and like that.
I mean, and I would like to say, and forgive me if I'm wrong, but my reading of Stelian as well is his resilience, his determination, I think, as you say, this going forward, keep going forward, despite
keep moving forward.
Yeah, despite everything, but being able, and I love his tenacity as well when faced, with these dilemmas and difficulty. Sandra, Marina, I wanted to ask you, when did you first? Did you translate Bogdan's first book? Was it you? No?
No, it wasn't. It was, I think I met Bogdan after. So I reviewed, for Crime Fiction Lover, I reviewed his book, Kill the General. Exactly. Which was translated before, wasn't it? Before The Greek Connection.
Yeah.
And then I met him at the Crime Fiction Festival in Lyon. So where I also met Bogdan Todorescu, and I thought I will specialize in translating Bogdan's because there's quite a few of them.
Yeah.
I could make a career of this, simply translating Bogdan's. I've read all of his books now in the series, and when he said, well, I've got a new one that's also partly set in Newcastle and South Shields, I thought, oh yes, that's probably the one to translate, even if it's out of order.
Wonderful, wonderful. Yeah, I have to say, I am not sure how many crime novels in the world start off in South Shields. And I just think anybody who's watching who is a Newcastle Noir attender, fan, who lives in the northeast of England, what an absolute tribute, Bogdan, for you to set it in North Shields. And can I say as well, when I first read it, I had a real sense of northeast noir. The way you describe, and we won't say too much, but the way you describe what happens at the beginning there in South Shields. The unfortunate. Go on.
I was there.
Were you there?
I was there. Yeah, I was there with Quentin Bates.
Yeah.
But when I've seen that beach, that place, I was with Quentin Bates just before Newcastle Noir for a sort of book presentation of him in that great building called The Word.
The Word, yeah. Beautiful library, yeah, beautiful.
Extraordinary. I love this new kind of libraries that you have in the United Kingdom. We don't have so many new buildings like in Newcastle, like in South Shields. So I said, a novel must start here on this beach. I don't know.
I love how you made those connections between the Northeast and Romania and Lund, but that the scenes there at the guest house on the beach. Anybody who's familiar with the Vera series on TV, it so feels like it's where it should be and how. So thank you, okay, from all of us in the Northeast that like our crime fiction. Thank you for doing that.
But you see, it's a sort of mirror because it's northeast of England, and on the other side is northeast of Romania. It's Iași. It's also the northeast. So I try to be something like a sort of mirrors, to how you say, to faces of a coin. No.
Yeah, the two sides of the
sides of a coin.
Yeah.
So the northeast of England and the northeast of Romania.
Beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And I do think, though, as well, that you captured very much the Newcastle nightlife in the way you describe what people wear, or rather what they're not wearing. Yeah, spot on. Yeah, definitely, definitely. One of the big issues in the book is all around fake news and the power of social media. And I wondered, for yourselves, Marina, I'll ask you first. You know, the social media is so powerful. So how do we find a way forward with this? You know, how do we decide how it can be used for good, and how do we understand when it's not being used in a positive way?
Oh gosh, if only I had the answer to that. Well, I think this book really shows how easy it is to manipulate people, and how, you know, if people don't question enough where the information comes from and don't do additional research, and they don't want to do additional research because it's so much easier to just believe the first thing that comes up, and especially if you're bombarded with the same kind of information and there's lots and lots of them, and we actually see a little bit behind the scenes of how that might work, and how they present themselves. And I think it's quite subtly done. You know, it's not overemphasized, but we kind of get hints of, oh, okay, so even those who present themselves as, you know, fighting disinformation might actually have a hidden agenda.
Yeah, yeah. But Bogdan, I wanted to ask you, doing your research for that aspect of the novel, did you at any time find yourself in online, or you know, in group discussions that might have been a little bit difficult or dangerous?
No, not directly. I
Uh-huh.
was a sort of observer only to
Yeah.
see. But you know, on our, let's say, on our fake news market in Romania, there are so many discussions, so many conspiracies. It's not necessary to be directly involved. You must be only like a bird, exactly like a bird, just flying uh, and observing everything and taking some piece from everything and rebuild, remake your own conspiracy. We have so many possible. The Romanian imaginations. It's absolutely wonderful in my opinion, and I think this is a very good. That's very good for us. And in the future, probably the Romanian literature, it will be more and more translated and more famous all around, because we love to think that behind everything it's another thing, and behind that thing it's another thing. It could be another interested, another person, another
And huge
mystery.
storytellers, yes.
Exactly.
Yes. Yeah.
The more complex the story, the better. We
The
do
better.
love a long story,
Yes.
yes.
And unfortunately, with this kind of living, thinking at conspiracies all the time, it's extremely easy to be manipulated by almost anybody. You know, everybody knows about everything in Romania. After in 1977, after the huge earthquake in Romania, I was very young, but I still remember the people on the streets, everybody knowing everything about civil engineering, earthquake, the Richter degrees on scales of I don't know how the buildings are built with columns, and everybody on football. Everybody knows everything on football. Everybody knows everything on tennis because we have Simona Halep, and before that it was Iliana Stas and others. So everybody knows everything. So if you want to convince somebody else about something, usually it's very easy.
I love that you say this as well, that this was happening, you know, back in the 70s, even before Google, when, you know, Google now allows us, you know, to access so much more. But even then, people felt they knew.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
The,
Thank
so,
you for that.
so
Thank
it's
you.
not very complicated. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. So if you can, Bogdan, tell us about because Stelian, you know, he's the kind of guy that people turn to when, you know, when something needs dealing with. I don't want to say fixer because it sounds, I don't know, maybe he isn't the kind of fixer that we've always got in mind. But what is the dilemma that faces him at the beginning of the book?
Oh, I don't think he has a dilemma. I think he wants to go back to his wife in London. And he's put in a situation that he must decide to goes to London to solve a problems. He doesn't want to be involved another time because in previous novels he has several, let's say, actions to solve problems, and some of them there weren't very well ended for him. I mean, for him and for friends. In a previous novel, his let's say spare partners, the policeman Tony Demetria, they had a sort of tragedy. It was a novel just before the Resilience, The Passions of Madam Minister, which had the plot in Copenhagen, and it wasn't very a very good ending for Tony. So he had enough. He wanted only to live his life peaceful, to talk with friends, not about solving problems, not about solving crimes and anything, any other problems like that. But it's impossible to run because you had connection. When you have connections, when you have, or when you had friends from all around not all around the world, but even all around the world, you must answer to their calls, because maybe once you need one of that guy to help you. So it's better to stay in connection with them, to keep the network living, even you don't really want that. And all of these people, because there is a how it's written here and at the list of characters, Ionescu, a spy. The spy called Ionescu, I mean, it's not quite, it's an official spy from the Secret Service. He, for him, is not the first novel. He was before in other situation, and he helped Stelian, and Stelian helped him. So it's like I said, it's a complicated life here in Romania. If you know people, it's sometimes not quite dangerous, but complicated, embarrassing.
Yeah, because one of the characters says about Stelian, says he's a small fish in a big pond of sharks. And I really like that sense of, you know, you spoke about the danger, and that danger is all around.
Yeah, but that small fish could swim very fast and could escape.
Yeah.
And it's the fight is only between the sharks. The sharks doesn't see the small fishes, and sometimes they need some small fishes from, I don't know, several problems to solve.
And I
several
think
small problems.
And I think the reason is also that people underestimate Stelian because he hasn't got an official position. You know, he's not officially a policeman. He's not a private investigator, even officially. He's not with the secret services, and he has had in the past some roles like that, but now he's kind of, you know, so he's officially an editor and a bit of a journalist and that sort of thing. So they underestimate, and you know, especially now that he's getting middle-aged and he's talking about his wife and he's talking about his coffee, and it's a little bit like Maigret, who, you know, appears very affable, very friendly. He's just sitting there having his Pernod, and then he listens to everything that's happening in the cafe around him and kind of sees patterns emerging.
And I think in that of the unofficial investigator and not bound by, you know, by any kind of institution.
Yes.
It allows him, I mean, I think it's as you were saying, Bogdan, just like that little fish, it allows him to be in places and take action and do things that maybe if he were part of something official, part of any authority, then that kind of action would be, you know, prohibited in a way, or would be difficult to.
Yeah, sometimes. He's a sort of unofficial liaison officer.
Yeah.
And, you know, in my eyes, in my brain, probably Stelian Montano is a sort of anti-Jack Reacher. Because Jack Reacher is very tall, he could fight, he could shot, he could do anything, he could solve all the problems. And at the end, he's alone. And at the end of each novel, he live somewhere in another part of that huge United States. But Stelian Montano is still in Bucharest. He doesn't fight. He only talks at his phone. He drinks coffees, and he don't want to solve problems. Usually, other person find him for solving problems. It's a boring person. It's a normal person. I mean,
yeah, but not boring at all. Because
with the others, it's better to be boring.
I wanted to ask you about the coffee, actually, because Stelian and his wife, I love, they have this coffee pot called the Missile, yeah? And I wanted to ask you, Bogdan, how important is coffee in your life?
Oh, it's extremely important. Absolutely. I couldn't write a letter without my coffee next to me. And I love to drink all kinds of coffees. And when I travel in another place, state, I mean, Southern Europe, Portugal, Spain, Italy, Greece, Turkey, I love to drink local coffees. And when you drink coffees, you talk with the other, you know. I think coffee, it's like a white flag. You could make peace all around the world drinking more coffee, because when you drink coffee, you can talk and you can listen the other. You can have a proper conversation. You could stay around the table.
It's a lifestyle and a mindset, isn't it?
Exactly.
It's not about the drink itself.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And I really like the way you say that thing of being able just to connect with people over something as simple, you know, as a warm brown liquid, but it does this. There's definitely some magic there. But talking of magic, Marina, I want to come back to you about the magic of translation. Yeah. And when you get to the end of, let's say when you got to the end of Resilience, yeah, as a translator, how does that make you feel?
Well, first, I'm very nervous because I'm thinking, what will the author think of it? And especially if I have suggestions for changing some things and shortening some things. And I'm afraid that Bogdan did hear from me, can we change? And, you know, I will admit now that we changed some characters' names.
Okay.
Yeah. So because there were too many with A. And we thought with Romanian names as well in the mix, people struggle. We know English readers struggle with foreign names and so on.
Definitely.
And if they all start with the same letter, it's going to confuse them. So we changed some names. And I think in the end, Bogdan actually quite liked some of my choices.
Some of the names are much more appropriate for the characters.
I can definitely tell you, okay, because I'm part of a book group, and I know some people who watch, you know, watch the consultations. I've said this before on it, that we are most grateful when it's not, you know, like, oh, getting used to new names, and if they all start with the same letter, it's like, who is that and what's that and how? So, thank you for the changes. Yeah.
Yeah, and also some of the, so I shortened, for instance, some of the coffee discussions because we were just talking about the coffee. So, you know, because I thought that the Romanian reader really finds that funny and, you know, it's appropriate and they can kind of relate to that and so on. But of course, not just that the English are more tea drinkers because, you know, the Americans are coffee drinkers, but I just thought they will think, well, why are they going on like that for so long? You know, where are they losing the plot? Is this relevant to the plot? So I didn't want to confuse them. So we toned that down a bit, but just a bit, because, you know, to lose it entirely would be to make it not very Romanian. So.
It's interesting though that to find that balance,
yeah,
where you don't lose what is being conveyed by the author, and you don't lose that sense of place. You know, I think that is such an amazing skill. And I've got another question for you as well about the skill in conveying. But thank you. You know, because of you, we have this just fabulous text, which Bogdan, what I really feel about this is the political understanding that you bring without it being a really heavy text to get into. You know, I mean, were you aware of having to write the balance when you wrote the novel?
You know, when I have written this novel, I had in mind some foreign readers, and I must admit that I had in my mind the idea to be translated.
Great.
And, I must publicly said a very profound thank you to Marina, because I think I could now I can now retranslate the book in Romanian, and it will be better, because really some of that conversations probably there were too long, and I think Harriet Darlow, just to putting a name on the screen now, Harriet Darlow, it's much better than the old name of that English policewoman. So I tried to put something also for foreign readers, but it's very complicated, and I hope it was. So I mean, it is a victory for me at the end to have some good reviews from Romanians and for foreigners. I mean, only for English public for the moment. Maybe, you know, in the future there will be more.
I think as well, what I really appreciate is the way, for example, you know, the faux British politeness of, you know, could you, would you, can you, will you, you know, and between the Romanian characters, there's none of this politeness. It's, you know, it's straight, you know, what do you want? What is it? Why are you doing this? Tell me what I need to know. And again, you know, Marina, to capture that essence in, you know, in what we read, so we know that these aren't British characters that are talking. Yeah, it's lovely. I did want to ask you, Marina, though, in translating Romanian, are there any moments where you think, oh God, it's this or it's that? How am I going to put this into English?
Quite often, yes. The thing is, Romanian is very colorful. So we, as you said, so when you talk, people talk quite directly and quite colorfully, and, you know, not necessarily swear words, but just, you know, quite slangy expressions and so on. And it's quite, but it's not any sort of jargon or a sort of street slang or something. And it's quite hard to render that into English and yet maintain a certain level of discourse, you know, because they're not, you know, I don't want them to sound like EastEnders or something like that, because they're not.
Yeah.
That would be a wrong, you know, equivalence. So yeah, it's quite challenging to give some local color, some of that feeling in English.
Yeah, but I think one of the favorite moments I've got in the book is where somebody was being described the way that they look, and it a proper plonker. So yes, excellent. Now, the neighbourhood in Bucharest, Titan.
Yes, it's like the
Titan.
old Greek
Titan. Yeah. When when we read this, for any of us who aren't familiar with Bucharest, Bogdan, what does that name evoke? Titan. What kind of place is it?
Oh, I don't think the name is important. I think we don't have neighborhoods with proper, let's say, borders, but Bucharest has 6 how you say counties? No,
Districts.
in French
It's
is districts.
Districts, yeah.
I wanted to say arrondissement, like in
Oh,
French.
dude, that's nice. I like that as well. Yeah.
So there are 6 local city halls, but inside each of these districts, number 3, where is that Titan is the biggest, and it was a sort of romanticism in it, because it was built in a communist period, more relaxed, more open in the 60s and early 70s.
Mm-hmm.
So it's full of green parks, trees. It's something like a different city inside of Bucharest.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope I can declare now exclusively here that it will be probably, I hope in the future, a novel called Free Titan. Imagine that some people want to proclaim the independence of a neighborhood in a cited capital of Romania, because it's very green and they don't want to export their oxygen to the others, because they have plenty of trees and the air is very good, and they don't want to spread that good air around the other.
And I think we already have an inkling of that in this book, don't we? Because there's
They talk
yeah,
about Free Titan.
yeah, the graffitis on the walls and
But
yeah.
you know, this is for a year. I heard some conversation like that, because in Bucharest it's a problem with parking places, yeah. But this neighborhood has enough parking places for everybody, because the block of flats are not so so dense like in the other part of Bucharest. So we have enough trees and grass and parks and gardens, and enough places for parking places for cars. So there is a sort of local patriotic feeling that we are from Titan. We want to keep our neighborhood like that. No more foreigners, no stranger, nobody wants to go inside of. We don't want to change anything. And one of these gardens, the Stelian with Tony had a conversation in that garden, which also had the name Titan, because the neighborhood took the name from that park, that garden. It's a sort of, let's say, Kensington Gardens a la Bucharest.
Okay.
Or Hyde Park, but I think better Kensington Park.
Okay.
But a part of this park must be because during the communist period they took some land from private property on the state owned now, and there are some lot of cases of, how you say in English, retro giving back the land to the ancient owners. And one of these parts now, this part of land, it's part of that garden. And the mayor of our district said we must give back the land to the owners. And people make on the internet, on Facebook, make a sort of quickly announcement on Facebook and I don't know, Facebook, it was also Instagram, and they rise few thousand of people, mommy with little kids and families, just to keep that part of the garden like that, not to be re-given to the owners. And the mayor, who came to talk with the 3,000 or 5,000 people, said, okay, we'll find a solution to give them some land in other places or some compensation, things like that, just because the people of the neighborhood want to keep their park.
So we should watch out for the book. Yeah,
I hope.
Yeah, definitely.
My editors told me that it must be something more shorter, a very short novel with that neighborhood, with a map, of course. Just
yeah, but honestly, can you not just see? I can see a great murder mystery coming out of that because of the tensions around the terrain and the political will there. So yeah, definitely. But I think Bogdan, you're doing what every author does. Your mind now is elsewhere. Here we are talking about resilience.
Absolutely.
But you're on the next project. Yeah, and that is so typical. I always feel really bad going back to ask an author about what they've already written, because of course by the time that gets published, and well, it's been translated and then published, resilience was way back for you. You're on the next project now. I get that. But what I did want to ask you about, the other aspect, the idea of talking about the current state of Europe. And I know it's a difficult topic to talk about, but why was it important for you to bring that element in, to talk about the joining together of certain states or not, the rise in certain extremism, activism? Why did you want to write about that? What does it mean to you?
I have a very profound answer. I think the Western countries, I mean, now I'm in Netherlands, and I have a conversation with a crime writer from here, Charles Dentex, a few days before, and I told him, I think you in Netherlands, you are in the West, you are now the border of Europe, the other side of the sea, it's United Kingdom. So here in the West, you have different approaches, different problems. We are in the East. In the East, I mean, it's about Poland, Romania, Bulgaria, Greece. We have different problems. We have the other border of the Europe. In that direction, there are more, for us, I mean, for Romanians, more dark problems could come, more problems could come, and there were in the past problems from that. So all our history, I mean, 1,500 years, we had problems from the East, not from the West. I don't know exactly if somebody attacked us in our history from West, but from East, there were a lot. I mean, Russians, Turks, some others. So the problems in East are who are the neighbors, the big neighbors, and who own the land. For this reason, I think we had a conversation about Free Titan, owning the land, having the power of keeping the power on the land. It's extremely important for the people from the East. And it's another problem from your side and from our side. We don't have so much water. We don't have seas. We are not an island. We can't realize what it to be an islander. I mean, surrounding by sea. In a way, you have a natural defense system. We don't. Between us and the eastern country, it's a plain, sometimes tiny rivers. So the problems comes from the east. It's a survival problem in the history. I mean, you are looking back. You are looking back. You see the problems from the past, and you make a sort of a game of imagination from the future. And the dangerous problems could come from the east, always. So for this reason, I put that threats about having new powerful eastern countries who can protect their citizens, who can protect their borders. Because I told you that the owning of the land and keeping the power inside the country. Probably it's a little bit difficult for British people. I mean, from English and Icelander people, from Icelandic. I think it's also difficult to understand, or for northern countries. But for us, it's our way of surviving during the history. I hope my answer was quite.
It's wonderful, Bogdan. Thank you, because again, for those of us that don't have a knowledge, an understanding, you know, even just reading about, you know, Romanian history, Romanian, you know, the experience of a nation, the forming of a nation, and all that means, and yeah, you know, to be almost landlocked, and how that affects the way you see yourself, and also the way you see those that are placed around you. If I can ask you, Marina, you know, in conveying those aspects, what do you think this novel brings to us about being Romanian, and you know, and moving around in Europe as well as a Romanian?
Well, I think it shows this kind of dichotomy, if you like, between, I think Romanians have adapted very well, if you like, and adopted with great enthusiasm Western living, and have turned, you know, their face towards the West, towards the EU. You know, it's all very, very popular, and young people love to travel and go abroad, study abroad, work abroad for a while, and so on. But there is, and I think I would argue that it's not just, you know, you're saying about Scandinavian countries, but I was thinking Finland have had a very troubled history with the East as well, and the Baltic states. So I think, you know, all of this side of Europe, on the edge of Europe, have had that experience. So it is something that people can relate to from other countries as well. And it's also, I think, that what is very topical, and I don't want to spoil anything, but there is this thing about the smaller states that are made to feel, or they want to say that they feel, you know, it's always a bit, you know, is it true, or is it their perception, or are they using it to manipulate for the populist vote or something like that, who are made to feel kind of second-rate citizens in Europe. And so, you know, they're trying to kind of get together and start something else, you know, and kind of raise their own importance. So I think people can relate to that, you know, even if they don't know all the ins and outs of it and aren't necessarily following politics. But this feeling of, oh, I'm small, I'm being pushed into the corner, and so on, and so I'm going to get my revenge. Yeah, I think that's very relatable.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, most definitely. That idea of voices that aren't heard, concerns that aren't dealt with, and very much that thing of, you know, what part do I play? You know, do I matter? And yeah.
Just a second.
Yeah, Bogdan, go ahead.
Even the cold wind of winter comes also from east.
Yes. Krivatsul.
Krivatsul, yes. It's a very
specific wind,
Slavic word. That.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose we should remember in history, thanks to the weather, that the course of the Second World War actually changed, regardless of what any other nations might have put into the contention. It was the weather from the east that shifted and changed things. My dear friends, I'm afraid I'm going to have to draw our consultation to an end. There is so much for us to discuss. I want to thank you both for bringing to English readers these stories. I mean, Stelian and the characters around him. You write characters, Bogdan, that always have an element of humor about them, even in the darkest and most difficult situations. And I think it's a beautiful way that you relieve the tension that mounts in the novel. That interaction. Marina, thank you. It's your hard work that's meant that we actually get to engage and indulge in these texts, and I really hope that, first of all, that resilience just resonates with people in the times that we're living in, but also that there will be more after this, and that we see Stelian, he might be getting a little bit older, and his priorities might have changed, but I do think that he has much to bring to us, and much to teach us in a way, and also just take us on those adventures. So thank you both, and I hope we see each other very soon.
Thank you for having us.
A total pleasure. Good night.
Bye.
Good night. Bye.